whoever makes the final mistake or the adjustment that's going to change the game, I think it's gonna pay dividends. Welcome back, everyone. This is Bando's Breakdowns, episode 76. It is the first episode officially in the month of February, and it is Friday, February 6th, just a few days away from Super Bowl 60 in Santa Clara. How are you guys doing this afternoon? Thanks so much for tuning in, whether you are on the video only side or audio only side. Let's take care of a few particulars before we get into the show today. Please be sure to watch the show by subscribing to the ETB network. That would be youtube.com/ETB network. And of course, you can listen to Bando's Breakdowns wherever you get your podcasts. Please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the ETB network as well. Very easy to do. Just go to our channel, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell. That way you don't miss a single episode of anything that appears on this network, including my own show as well. You can also subscribe to my personal YouTube channel if you're finding the shows that way as well. That's just Zain Bando 99. It's the same as all my personal X and Instagram handle. Excuse me. It's all the same as my X and personal Instagram handles as well. So just bear that in mind as such as well. All right. That is going to do it for the housekeeping in particulars. Let's get into what we're going to be discussing today on the show with Zan's overview. So it's going to be the same show length as it usually is, but it's going to be fewer topics because most of the topics that we're going to be discussing are going to take up probably most, if not the entire episode. So decided to trim the fat, if you will, only talk about the important things this week and not drag it on longer than it needs to be. So I guess let's get started with my Super Bowl pick right off the top. Super Bowl 60, Seattle minus 4.5, over under 45.5. There's been some movement on this game, but I think it's going to stay pretty steady with this number. I picked this on ETB Sports with Nick Morrison, episode 303, and I'm sticking with my same prediction here. I think Seattle wins Super Bowl 60. Here are a few reasons why. Mike McDonald has a chance to become one of, if not the youngest coach to ever win a Super Bowl. So that's pertinent. That's number one. Number two, Jody Allen is selling the team after the Super Bowl is over. So, of course, she'll want to go out on a high note 1,000%, as her stint with the team will be over by then. And number three, because it's a little bit close to my heart, Devin Witherspoon, the highest rated draft pick in the Brett Bielema era, has a chance to win his first Super Bowl. He's been an absolute beast the last few years. I think it's really awesome. On the other side, though, you have the Patriots, who, quite frankly, have been one of the biggest surprise teams in all of football, led by Drake May and led by just a really solid defense as well. The defense has really carried them through the playoffs. You want to talk about, you can say whatever you want about who they played and if their postseason run was soft or not, but you got to give New England some credit here. Their defense has been really good, and when Drake May is efficient, he plays really well. But under 100 yards passing is not going to win you a Super Bowl. So something tells me that Seattle's defense is just going to be too much for New England to handle. I'm going to go out on the same notion I said the other day. I think it's going to be 27-20, 30-20, something like that. Seattle's defense controls the clock. I think the run game is effective, and I think JSN has a few huge catches as well to solidify his place in Super Bowl history. It's not going to be anything historic, but I do think he will, at the very least, touch a touchdown in this game, and I think ultimately that's going to make the difference between a win and a loss as well. So I think this is a chance to be a very, very, very good game. And I also think too that when you look at this game from a holistic standpoint, it's one of those games where whoever makes the final mistake or the or the adjustment that's going to change the game, I think it's gonna pay dividends as well. So I think it's something to bear in mind as such, and I think it's one of those. I think it's one of these games where, again, it's going to be momentum shifts, and I think it's going to be one of those games where you're going to see holes in both sides of these two teams where you're like, okay, maybe they don't fully stack up against one another in the way that we thought. So give me Seattle to at least cover this number as well. And before we move on from Super Bowl 60, I just wanted to go over my NFL conference title record as well. That's something we haven't really discussed in about a week. So just as a reminder how we're doing, we went 1-1 on conference championship weekend, 0-2 against the spread. We are 6-6 against the spread in the postseason, 44-21 overall if you count the Bando's blitz NFL plays, and then overall straight up we are 182 and 101. So if we win this game, we'll be at 183 wins, and if we lose, we will have to at least accept the fact that we were, unfortunately, over 100 losses. So it is what it is. There's not really much I can fully do about it, but just a few quick particulars before we move on from this game. Kickoff is at 6:30 Eastern. There's going to be a gigantic pregame show on NBC. But speaking of pregame shows, figured I would do a few quick plugs. There's going to be a lot of ETB content. And when I say a lot of ETB content, I mean a lot of ETB content coming down the pipeline, if you will, leading up to the Super Bowl. I mean, it is going to be, it's probably one of the biggest days in terms of live shows in the history of this network, because we've been doing a lot more live shows. So we're going to discuss just kind of, I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version. I won't give you everything, just because if I gave you everything, we'd be here for a while and we wouldn't be able to move on to other things. But I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes. So, with it pertaining to me, I will be live on Friday with the rest of the crew. We will preview Super Bowl 60 and our prop bets and our predictions for the game for an hour and a half. It'll be 6:30 to 8, I'm pretty sure, which is 5:30 to 7 Chicago time. So we will do that. Oh, and by the way, there's not going to be a Bando's Blitz this week either. We're saving that for a Bando's bonus video that's going to go up the morning after the Super Bowl. Just did not make sense to do a Blitz video because we're already picking the Super Bowl on the show and stuff like that. So it's too redundant. So we're going to do a bonus video on Monday. Figured I would plug that programming note in as well. But what I was going to say was, when you flip over to Sunday's content, usually you guys know me for Zain Zinger Part 2, okay? So Zain Zinger Part 2 is going to continue, but the difference with this edition of it compared to previous weeks is I won't be the only one on. So there's going to be a combined stream with myself, Michael Rapolo, Ben Cruz, and Grant Winsauer, and we're going to preview Super Bowl 60 as a combined team. Grenard Gurus and Zain Zinger. So we're going to do that, and we're going to preview the Super Bowl. It's going to be a combined rundown. So a lot of it is going to be NFL. So you're not going to get what you would usually get from me on Zinger. Usually, if it was this week and I was on by myself, we'd probably do the Super Bowl. We'd do a college basketball recap of the Illinois-Michigan State game. We'd probably do some other stuff as well. We'd probably recap the UFC fight from the night before. We do a bunch of things, but we're not going to do any of that just for this 1 week. So if you want, I guess, the recap and what would have been Zinger, tune into bonus. I'll include all that stuff in there. It's not just going to be the Super Bowl. It would be what would have been, what would have gone on this version of Zinger as well. So if you guys feel like there's a content gap, I can promise you there's not, because it's still going to be covered. Don't worry about it, and it's going to be just fine. So just something to bear in mind as well there too. So there's that as well. So again, big day of content. Also, I did not mention this as well. I'd be remiss if I didn't. Shortly after, I'm not sure on the time of this, but in the mid-afternoon, leading up to the Super Bowl. I think right before the Super Bowl kicks off is when it will be over. Press row with Callan McClurg and Nick Morgeson. They're going to take you up until the game. It's going to be like a counter program to the NBC pregame show, and I'm sure they're gonna have a lot of fun stuff to say about the pregame show. I'm sure they're probably gonna make fun of it and do a few other things that it's not really my cup of tea to do that. So they're gonna take you through that, and then right afterward, apparently it's being planned as we speak. Ben Cruz, the Patriots fan on the network, is going to do a post game show, win or lose, for his team. So stay tuned for that. It's right after the game, and I'm sure it will do very well numbers wise because everybody will be looking for Super Bowl content, regardless of who wins. So should be exciting. And again, that's a bit of a programming note for ETB for Sunday. It's a huge day. It's clearing the bench. The Super Bowl takeover, I'm pretty sure, is the name of it. So stay tuned for all that stuff. It starts on Friday. And then Saturday, I forgot to mention, there's going to be unnecessary wagers with Nick DiMartino and William Bardwick, and they're going to preview and pick the Super Bowl from a betting standpoint. So you'll get pretty much the Super Bowl covered from all angles. And of course, I just gave you my pick as well, and I will give you my full recap of the game on Monday morning. But for now, let's move on. That's enough NFL talk. At least you guys have my pick for the Super Bowl, so that's great. Let's move on to UFC now. So UFC 325 this past Saturday saw Alexander Volkanovski win his rematch with Diego Lopes by unanimous decision. If you guys remember, this was a fight that took place last April at UFC 314 in Miami for the vacant featherweight title, and how that happened. And by the way, I made a mistake on last week's show. I meant to talk about this at the beginning of the stream, but now that we're on this topic, it's the perfect time to mention it. I gave you guys the wrong month that Ilya Topuria knocked out Volk, so that's my fault. Topuria knocked out Volk, and I knew instantly after I said it that I was wrong. Topuria knocked out Volk in February of 2024 at UFC 298 because April would have been UFC 300. So I just wanted to clear that up out of the way for any confusion. But nonetheless, that fight happened because Ilya Topuria moved up to lightweight to challenge Charles Oliveira for the vacant title, and of course he won. So now there's a bit of a holding pattern now. There's a bit of a holding pattern now with the division because of what's going on personally with Ilya. Will Ilya fight Justin Gaethje? That's a totally separate topic than this. But talking about Volk now ties the record for the most featherweight championship wins with 8, joining Jose Aldo. Okay, and I'm not going to go too deep on this, but I will say this: there's a prominent MMA journalist, and I'm not going to say who it is out of respect to him because I like his work a lot. Let's just say that. But he wrote an opinion column the other day that I just could not stand. He tried to justify to the MMA masses, which thank goodness almost everybody and their mom disagreed with him because to me his take was just completely incorrect. And from a factual standpoint, it makes it even worse. He tried to claim that Jose Aldo is still the best featherweight in the world of all time, despite what Volk has done. Okay, here's where I disagree completely. Okay, I understand Aldo was undefeated for 10 years. Okay, but you have to remember that most of those years were not years that he was in the UFC. Okay, you have to think about that. He was undefeated since 2005. He didn't enter the UFC until 2011. So that's fact number 1 right there. Number 2, Alexander Volkanovski, before he became champion, beat Aldo head to head at UFC 237. A lot of people don't remember that. So I think that needs to count for something. That's number 2. And then you got to think about this. He beat Max Holloway when Max Holloway was at his peak 3 times. Okay. Now, when you look at Jose Aldo never beat Max Holloway. He lost to him twice. And the second one in Detroit, which I was there in person for, was an absolute destruction. The fight wasn't even close. So that's another argument against Aldo. Okay. Jose Aldo lost to Conor McGregor in 13 seconds. Okay. Now, Conor McGregor was supposed to be, arguably in a different universe, what Alexander Volkanovski became in that division. Okay. Last I checked, Alexander Volkanovski only lost to arguably the pound for pound best fighter in the world today. Okay. When Jose Aldo lost to Conor McGregor wasn't even close yet to the star power that he ended up gaining off of those fights. Okay. He still hadn't fought Nate Diaz and he still hadn't fought Eddie Alvarez. So that's another argument against Aldo that I think needs to be looked at. That's number 3. And then you have to look at Aldo's inconsistency. After he lost the featherweight championship, he was never the same again. You look at Volkanovski, he was rolling through featherweight, goes up to lightweight, loses to Makhachev in a close fight, comes back and beats Yair Rodriguez convincingly at UFC 290 like it was no big deal. Aldo? Yeah, man. Aldo may have worked his way back up, but after he lost to Holloway, he was never the same fighter again. And then he lost to Mario Batista on top of it. Okay, which is to me a sour way to go out. It really is. So that's another argument to look at too. And you also have to look at the caliber of fighter that Volk beat in his reign compared to Aldo's reign. Because if you look at some of the guys that Aldo beat, some of these guys really never amounted to competing in high level MMA again. The prime example of this, Kenny Florian never won a title. He may have been on season 1 of The Ultimate Fighter, but he was never one of these guys that was, he was memorable. He had some great fights, but he never won a title. You look at Chad Mendes, he was always so close yet so far away. Okay, you look at the likes of the Korean Zombie, right? When he fought the Korean Zombie, was the Korean Zombie really the same as he was in 2000 and in 2010 when they fought a couple years later? I'm not so sure. And then you also look at some of his other wins where they were don't get me wrong, his run was extremely impressive. I'm not taking anything away from it. But when you look at Volk, he's lost to two of the best fighters at featherweight and lightweight over the last 5 years. Okay. He beat arguably the greatest featherweight of all time 3 times. Okay. Now, some may argue twice. I argue it was twice. I think Holloway beat him in the second fight. But nonetheless, he beat the judges said he beat Holloway 3 times. That is to count for something. As I just alluded to, Holloway beat Aldo twice. Okay. And as I said, the second one was a complete whitewash of a fight. So, and again, back to my first argument, head to head, Volk beat Aldo. I get it was before Volk became champion, but I think where the disconnect comes in is you're talking about a 10-year reign where 5 of those years were in the UFC and the other 5 years were in other promotions, WBC, et cetera, et cetera. So I personally think you can make the argument, and I'm not saying this guy can't make the argument. Anybody can make any argument they want, but I feel like the facts outweigh the emotion of it. I think Volk clearly the numbers clearly show that Volk I think has overtook Aldo, even though he's tied the record. So that's just my personal opinion on that. Again, to each their own, of course, but I don't think I would put Aldo still ahead of Volk. If this was, Volk of, if let's say he had not regained the featherweight championship like he did with, he didn't win the vacant title fight against Lopes and he lost to Lopes, and then maybe in an alternate universe he lost to Lopes again, which obviously didn't happen, then maybe we could have this discussion. But because he tied the record for the most title fight wins in divisional history and beat the guy he tied the record with, I think those are the only arguments you need. So there's that. Overall on the card, we did okay. We went 3-2 on the main card for this one, 7-6 overall. I'll take it. So we're 14-10 through the first two UFC events of the year. We had a pretty solid week this past week as well because we had I'm pretty sure a 7 win. We were 7-4. Um, we were 7-4 this past or on UFC 324 from what I recall. So overall, not too bad, but we will take a 14-10 overall record. So nonetheless, hoping to do a little bit better this week as the UFC goes back to Vegas for the first time. For the first time under the Fight Night banner for the year and for the Paramount Plus era. It is UFC Vegas 113 from the Meta Apex, and it's a pretty decent card. It's a hardcores card, if you know what I mean. It's one of those cards where, you know, I just think there's going to be the UFC fans that are going to be obsessed with this card, and then there are going to be the ones that, you know, really aren't, just because, you know, it's not top heavy like the first two UFC events have been so far this year. So let's take a look at the card. Let's see who's on the card, and I'll give you my early thoughts. I have not made predictions for this card just yet, and just so you guys can recall here, and just making sure I give you guys the right numbers. Yeah, so we went 7-6 on 325, and we went 7-4 on on uh on 324. So 14-10 will take it. So anyway, nonetheless, let's talk about UFC Vegas 113. All right, so the main event of the evening here is going to be Mario Batista versus Vinicius Oliveira. That is a 5-round main event, despite neither of these guys being champions or anything. And I figured I'd let you guys know, just for the newer UFC consumers that might be watching. It's another 13-fight card. All right, let's take a look at the main event. It is a huge fight in the bantamweight division. Mario Batista, according to Tapology, is the number 7 ranked UFC bantamweight, sporting a 16-3 record, while Vinicius Oliveira out of Brazil is 23-3 and is ranked number 18. So he's just on the outside. Looking in, his UFC record for Batista is 10-3, while Vinicius is a perfect 4-0. Let's take a look at who Mario Batista has beat over the last couple of years, if you don't mind. Okay, so Batista lost his last fight to Umar Nurmagomedov. It was not very competitive. As I just alluded to, he beat Aldo by split. So before this loss to Umar, he was doing pretty well. He hadn't lost a fight since March of 2021 to Trevin Jones. So he had been on a nice run. Let's take a look at who he's beat. Benito Lopes, Brian Kelleher, Jay Perrin, Guido Canetti, Damon Blackshear, Ricky Simone, and of course, as I just alluded to, Aldo as well. So overall, this is a pretty solid. He wins most of his fights by decision, but if you want to take him as a finishing prop here, my argument for a bet here, if you want to take Batista, is by submission. He has 6 wins by submission and only 3 by knockout. So that, I think, works in his favor really well. Let's take a look at Vinicius Oliveira, better known as the Woke Dog, one of the most exciting prospects in the UFC as a whole. A very small sample size. 3 of his wins were by decision, and his first fight against the Pie was a brutal 3rd-round flying knee knockout. So I think this fight could go one of two ways. It's either going the distance or Batista is finishing Oliveira. So I'm not sure how to feel on this fight, but I think I'm going to go with the finishing ability of Batista over the grind out ability of Woke Dog. So I'm going to say Batista gets a stoppage win in the 3rd round by TKO in the main event of UFC Vegas 113. It's not an extremely top-heavy card, but let's go over what time it starts and all that good stuff. So again, they're on Paramount now, so if you guys haven't gotten the memo, Paramount Plus is the home of the UFC. I'm going to keep saying it until people get it. 5 Eastern prelims, which would mean 8 Eastern main card from the Meta Apex. It's the only UFC event in Vegas for the entire month of February, because February 21st they go to Houston, and February 28th they go to Mexico City, which now Mexico City is a new main event. So there's that as well. So enjoy this brief Vegas stop while you can. Should be a decent card. Some other fights on the card as well. We're not going to preview them, but Amir Albazi's on this card in the co-main event against Kyoji Horiguchi. Huge fight at flyweight. One of those two guys is going to get back in title contention. Jolton Almeida has a chance to make a huge statement against Rizvan Kuniev. Marc-Andre Barriot is on this card opposite Michelle Owen-Jacek. Dustin Jacoby is on this card. He's always fun. Nico Price is back in action. And of course, the card opens with some interesting fights, but it'll open with Priscilla Cachoeira taking on Claudia Seguia as the opening fight of the night. So if you guys need an MMA fix Saturday night, you can get it at the Apex in Las Vegas. All right, let's move on. Dana White's Boxing Mount Rushmore. He did a podcast. It's called Rushmore, I think, and it's hosted by Ari Emanuel. And he had Max Kellerman on. Ari did. He had Dana on, and he had this other guy on who I didn't know who he was. And they went over their Boxing Mount Rushmore, and it was overall pretty good. Dana's Mount Rushmore is a solid one. He had Mike Tyson, he had Sugar Ray Robinson, he had Floyd Mayweather, and he had Muhammad Ali. I thought his Mount Rushmore was fantastic. I think this is the podcast where Dana's passion to me started to really trickle out again. I think he's really excited about this boxing project. And when I mean really excited, I mean really, 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 really excited. I think he's interested in what the sport can become from a financial standpoint. I also think he's very interested in the fact that this feels like, it's his own, and that he can control it, and that he can build it in the same way that he built the UFC. He did say some things, or Max Kellerman said some things I didn't agree with, that like Dana changed the rules. Technically, the athletic commissions did, specifically the New Jersey State Athletic Commission at UFC 28. Of course, the UFC worked with a lot of other state regulators to get regulated in all 50 states, so they can get credit for that, but they can't get credit fully for changing the rules. And then the hardcore MMA fans know that that's called the Zuffa myth. So there's that as well. But overall, a good episode. If you guys haven't watched it, it's on X, and I think it's on YouTube as well. It's really, really well done. It's done in Dana White's bar at UFC headquarters, which they had a comfortable spot, and the lighting was good, and they had a really interesting discussion. It was a 45-minute podcast, but it goes by pretty quickly. They talked about so many different things, and I got to give this one to Max Kellerman, though. His encyclopedic knowledge of the sport of boxing is very, 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 very impressive. So I just have to say that off the top, that I was really impressed to listen to him talk about just the historical significance of all of the fighters they were mentioning, trying to get this all dialed in. And I thought overall it was a good episode. And speaking of boxing, Zuffa Boxing 02, it's a pretty good card. Let's talk about the main event. Valenzuela versus Torres. Absolute war. Great fight. Awesome fight. Couldn't ask for much more. Those guys went to war in there, and I mean, that's what boxing is all about. It's heart, it's will, it's determination. It's guys that want to go out there and put everything they have on the line. I thought overall it was just a fantastic fight. Production of the show was really good. The pacing of the show I thought was a lot better. Some of the fights were okay. There was that one heavyweight fight that I couldn't stand. It was this Mexican boxer who was way out of shape and he fought this former college football player, and the former college football player just absolutely dominated this guy. It was not the prettiest scene in the world. I thought it was a very, very, very lackluster fight. Probably the worst fight on the card in terms of matchmaking. I don't know what they were expecting from those two guys. But again, main event was solid overall. Pretty good Zuffa Boxing show. The next one is February 15th as well. That's the one with Williams headlining it, I'm pretty sure. But nonetheless, though, I'm excited. I've liked the product so far. I'm excited for the Jairo Pataya fight next month. It should be very exciting, and I'm also excited for this potential rumor to be true. This Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua rumor potentially with Zuffa Boxing promoting it on Netflix later this year. If they were able to get that done, that would be pretty gigantic, and I think a lot of people would come out for that fight, and that'll probably be at T-Mobile Arena or Allegiant Stadium. So, I think if they could get that done, that'd be really cool, and that would be a fight that I would certainly consider attending. And I've never been to a major boxing event before. I went to a card in Chicago last August, and I'm blanking on who the main event was for that card. But I went to that at the UIC Pavilion, but it would be nowhere close to what a Fury Joshua fight would be. So excited to see what comes from that, if anything at all. All right, one thing that I saw, the Bulls made a bunch of moves. Vukovic is gone. That sucks. But now the question is going to be is can the Bulls get Giannis Antetokounmpo? And just to be fully transparent here, I'm a very casual Bulls fan, but I can tell you what, there are going to be a lot of my friends that if the Bulls get Giannis, which as far as I know, at the time that we're recording this, I don't think Giannis is on the Bulls yet. Let me double check this. Yeah, so as of an hour ago, at the time that we're recording this, the Timberwolves and Golden State Warriors have entered the mix. So maybe the Bulls won't get Giannis, but nonetheless, if the Bulls do get Giannis Antetokounmpo, I think a lot of my friends would be very excited. The Bulls just really haven't been the same team since the Derrick Rose, Taj Gibson, Carlos Boozer years, in my opinion. And of course, I love watching Ayo Dosunmu play as well because he went to Illinois. But it's been very difficult to be a Bulls fan just because of what the team has done. I mean, they are so, and this is nobody's fault other than management. They're just so kind of content with this play-in every year. And if you get in the play-in, great. If you don't get in the play-in, it's like no big deal. Like they're just so nonchalant to me that it's so hard to just pay attention to this team. It really is. Would them getting Giannis make me watch them? Absolutely. I mean, the guy's a freak of nature when he's healthy. And when he's not healthy, he doesn't play well. So I don't know if the Bulls would be getting an aging version of Giannis, a reinvigorated version of him. I don't know, but it's a huge risk financially to essentially trade all of your stars away. What will the Bulls do? I have no idea, but nonetheless, it all remains to be seen. And then finally, Zain Zinger. It's just one this week. Afternoon Super Bowls should be considered in future years. It used to be a thing back in the day, 60s and 70s, these afternoon start times for the Super Bowl. I don't understand why the NFL doesn't embrace this more. The NFL is played at noon and 3:30 on Sunday afternoons. I don't understand, or at least noon and 3:30 in Chicago. It'd be 1 and 4:15, 4:30 Eastern over in New York. But nonetheless, the NFL embraces the Sunday afternoon, roll up in a blanket and relax and watch football. I understand they want prime time and stuff for the ratings and all that stuff, but the NFL is best played during the afternoon on a Sunday. And I think that if they did this, NFL fans would be very much appreciative of this because I think it pays tribute to what the true heartbeat of the game, or at least when the true heartbeat of the game and when it's played, which is on Sunday afternoon. So I would argue that the NFL should at least switch it up a couple years, especially if there's all these rumblings going around that Netflix might get the Super Bowl, which means it may become an all streaming affair. So, nonetheless, I don't know, but what I can tell you is I would be open to this, but will the NFL listen to me? No, and I'm not important enough or have enough influence for the NFL to listen to me. So my point is probably mute at this point. But nonetheless, though, I think it's something that they should consider for the future. I would be in complete support of watching the Super Bowl at noon 1 or 2 on a Sunday, on Super Bowl Sunday. But nonetheless, that more than likely won't happen. So that's going to do it for another edition of Bando's Breakdowns. Again, this has been episode 76. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really, really, really appreciate it. And for a few final quick reminders before we get out of here, please be sure to like and subscribe. YouTube.com/GTV Network is where you can do that. And you can follow the show on social media, which is where all of the clips and all of the reels live every single week. It would be very much appreciated if you guys checked all of that out. We've been very consistent with those, and we will continue to be as well. And for those of you who are listening on the audio only side, thank you for doing so. If you have not subscribed or listened yet, please be sure to listen to Bando's Breakdowns wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so much more. And of course, thank you so much again for tuning in. My name is Sam Bando. I'm a sports journalist and an ETV Network co-host. Check out my work several different places: Sporting News, MMA Knockout on Sports Illustrated, Dallas Wings on Sports Illustrated, Ohio State on Sports Illustrated, Field Level Media, and many other syndicates across the World Wide Web. But nonetheless, though, that's going to do it for another edition of Bando's Breakdowns. Again, for everybody here at the Empty the Bench Podcast Network, thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Enjoy all the festivities that come with the Super Bowl. And until next week, where we will recap it all and so much more, I'm Sam Bando. Have a great rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend, everyone, and we will see you guys soon. Cheers. Thanks.